Abstract Transmissions.
Hello. Thank you for listening to Abstract Transmissions. Welcome back. It has been a while, and I apologize to listeners. We'll go into that briefly. We have a great episode for you today. We have an awesome guest and surprise for you today. Jessica Rainville, Jess Rainville, the one and only extraordinaire. Hello. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for being our new co-host.
Yes, thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Like it's
so
weird like to think I went from being just like a one-time guest to co-host. Like how cool is that?
I'm super excited. I think it's going to be really great and a good way to loosen up the dialogue. I mean, not that it hasn't been good the last, I've been holding it down, I feel like okay, but it isn't the same. It just isn't the same having that like 3-person dialogue. I feel like it's so much more free flowing if it's somebody that you don't know, especially,
I agree. And also like I listen to a lot of like one-person podcasts, and sometimes it's like, okay, they just ramble on for, an hour, half an hour, however long. And
yes,
sometimes you want to hear banter. And so I feel like that's the beauty of having a co-host, is that you get that banter that you don't get by yourself. And
you're completely right.
yeah. And with a guest, it's, when you're interviewing someone or whatever, it's nice to have that other person to fill in the void, because the beauty of interviewing is about listening, and you can't always listen and produce and do everything that goes on in the background at the same time if you don't have help.
I agree. I mean, I think that's really it, and it's been a big build on me, at least conversationally. When I sold appliances, I would really talk too much, because if I felt like there was room for silence, and this could be part of the ADHD, like the social kind of nuances there that I guess a lot of times people with ADHD or on the spectrum don't pick up on certain things, where if a customer would be like talking and then they'd stop, it's okay for them to have a second where nobody's talking, but my uncomfortableness, I would just keep going.
Yep. I also suffer from ADHD.
Yes.
So
yes,
I totally get it.
Having that time to, well, with the podcast, you hear yourself, and it's made me still have room to work. It's made me a better listener. I pick up on it more than I'm like, okay, now it's time to shut up, like right now.
Yes. And the other beauty though is that you don't want a lot of silence, that white noise in the background, like radio silence. That's a bad thing.
Yes.
So for us, like it's good to be able to have a medium where those things shouldn't be happening, so we don't feel quite as bad.
That's it. I mean, I think that too often, and I hear this a lot, I had no idea. I'm going into the podcast thing completely blind, outside of like, I listened to a couple episodes of Joe Rogan, I think a few times, and like mostly story related podcasts. I find those really interesting.
Like what kind of stories though?
I mean, I did like, and again, I'm new to it, so like I've had like a crime story, and there was like a sci-fi one that I thought was really cool.
Are
and
they
I listened to a couple
fiction?
of ones that you did, which I thought was really cool, but I don't remember. It was a while. It was back when we did like the first episode.
Yeah.
And that and I did actually, it was one of like an old school like Cinderella, like, but the old, like the German original version of it, which is fucking fucked.
It's
dark as shit.
Yeah.
I'm like,
what was it? Who was it who wrote those? Oh my gosh, I can't think of his name, but he wrote a whole shitload of fables.
Christian Andersen,
is
that right?
Yes, Hans Christian Andersen.
Holy shit, I can't believe I remember that.
Right? I wish I would have remembered that. But Disney basically like took all of his shit and turned it into like all these fairy tales or whatever, but they are not like that at all. They are super dark.
Completely dark, horrifically dark in comparison.
And I think like it's interesting to hear the different takes on them, but like,
yeah,
these are children's stories and they're that dark it makes me wonder, like, how is that a child's story? Like,
I'll tell you exactly how. The same way religion, and I mean everybody's perspectives on religion, I'm not going to say
yep.
that it's basically made to scare children into do it or I'll fucking spank you, but that's pretty much what happens with most of these children's stories, at least. And then if you look at religion, there's a lot of correlations there. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, this is one thing that, like, with stories specifically, where it's like Krampus, good example. They're just scaring their children into submission, which is psychologically kind of fucked up.
I would okay, like I don't think, like, first of all, I don't have children. I don't want children. I don't think I'd make a good parent,
Yeah,
but just because I'm too childish myself, like I can't tell you how many times I have like ice cream for dinner just because I want to. So like I am not a good positive example for children in
yeah,
that manner. Like I can have fun with them, like Auntie Jess. I'm the best fucking Auntie Jess there ever was. But
right.
I would never be a parent. And because I just don't have that capacity. But I could tell you one thing, I would never use fear like that to make my children obey me, because
Right.
that would like I feel
What
like
kind of
that's what causes psychopaths.
yes, it's so fucked. Well, they go, well, if you don't, keep your children. It's the same thing with spanking your kids or hitting your kids. And I've never got it my entire life.
Yeah.
It's like now my parents, my mom spanked me like once or twice, I think I remembered in my life.
Oh, I
She
got
washed
spanked
my
a
mouth
lot.
out with soap a couple of times, which is fucked
Mm-hmm.
up. I'm like, no, the chemicals, this is lye and chemical fat. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
But it worked in some ways, and I get that. But I never ever physically laid a hand on Gavin. We've had some pretty intense moments where we've yelled at each other. It's gotten more heated than I ever want to admit as a parent. But
Right.
I've never laid a hand on my kid, and I would never lay a hand on him because it doesn't teach it. It just teaches him to be afraid of me. Like
Well, and
it's
honestly, I feel like
not
as a
discipline.
parent, like like this is just what I've read, like just from like different things or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I feel like parents should be the example to their children in a high stress situation of how to handle it.
And what are you
Because
showing them?
if they are having a meltdown in the middle of the store and you're
Yes.
losing your shit too, then
Yes.
that's what they're going to think is like, oh, when I go to a stressful situation like this, or when this happens to me, I need to
Yes.
lose my shit. But if the parent is calm about it and recognizes, like, hey, like sometimes this happens, then I feel like the child over time, once they outgrow that, then they'll see like, okay, like I'm not going to overreact.
Right.
Like
It's like teaching my child to not have a tantrum by having a tantrum about them having a tantrum.
exactly. Like I
Like I'm
I
gonna
I
hit
feel
my
like
kid to teach them not to hit my kid or swear at my kid. Don't fucking swear.
yeah.
Which, look, I am totally not being like above, I'm a helicopter parent in a lot of ways. I do things a lot of parents will laugh at me about, but I am not like pretentious. And for anybody else, to each their own. I'm not going to judge. No, I am going to judge if you hit your kids. I think it's shitty, but
Yeah.
it is, you can't help, everybody judges everybody. But
Yeah.
my thing is like people are going to do their thing, and like I just wouldn't do it that way myself, and I think there's a better
Yeah.
way. But at the same time, I I understand that it's hard as shit. But I feel like if you're not ready, people should be so much more careful than to just introduce souls into existence. You know what I mean? They're just kind of like, you know,
That's exactly that's my thought. That's why I'm not having kids.
it's not just babies. Like it's not just like they're not there to fix your fucked up relationship or to you like people get married to fix their relationship.
Yeah, people have
People have
kids to do that
kids
too.
to fix their relationship. And it's like that is so exponentially fucked up
Yeah, and that's what fucks up children. And
for sure.
the only other thing that I will say though is like, and this is just my opinion, and I will probably offend some people, but whatever.
That's what
That's
we
what
do here.
happens. You know what? Opinions are just that, opinions. This is not based on fact, but
Right.
I also feel like people are too chummy with their children
Yeah.
nowadays,
Yeah.
and they don't hold them accountable or they don't uh
They're
you
not
know,
consistent.
yeah, and like for example, like schools,
Yeah,
if a child is not doing their homework or whatever, I feel like a lot of parents will blame the teacher before they'll blame their child.
absolutely. They
And
won't take responsibility ever.
right. And I feel like that also contributes a lot to the problem, is that the children think like, oh, well, my parents are just going to handle it for me. And
Right.
then later on in life, it's like that everybody gets a trophy syndrome where it's like, I
That's a problem.
expect, I expect that I'm going to have all of these wonderful things happen all the time, and everyone is going to appreciate me, and everybody is going to say, what a great job you're doing,
Right.
Johnny.
That's not real fucking
And
life. And you're
that's not
setting
real
up to
life.
fail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's how Kayla was too. She was terrified of that. And that's why I'm trying so hard, because it's like, not only trying to follow what I want, I'm also trying to make sure that it's things that she would have wanted for
Mm-hmm.
him. And I want to make sure that like consistently he, is showing respect at the same time. Like it's this fine line, you know what I mean, with your kids. You don't want to, fuck them up. You want them to be respectful, but you want to take accountability for what you're doing as a parent too. Like, I make mistakes, and when I do, I apologize to my kid. You know how fucking hard that is to admit to your
I
child, the person that
know.
they have to listen to you, and they have to look up to you to be basically the rule maker. And when you fuck up, like, well, why are you making the rules? You fucked up, just you worse than me. You know what I mean? And they're
Yeah.
not wrong. But most parents don't look at it that way. Most parents look at it as like they are wrong and I'm right and what I say goes. And it's like, that's a fucked up ego. And that's, you teach that to your kid in a weird
Yeah.
way. And my dad, I love Caesar, for people who knew my father. Uh he was a great man, but he did instill that in me. I'm kind of an asshole. When I get pushed up against the wall and I'm in an uncomfortable situation, I don't like get uncomfortable and shut down. I do the opposite. I go from really nice guy to really fuck you, Mark. And my dad. I learned that from him because he was the same way. A really nice guy, and also very intimidating. I'm not,
Yeah.
but and he would get, pretty pissed easy if he felt pushed into a corner.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
I think kids operate that
it's
way
that
too,
animal instinct, really. Because I mean, think about it. It's
the
that fight or
reptile
flight.
brain.
Yeah, it's that fight or flight. I'm either gonna, fight, or I'm gonna just cower and back away. And if you don't have that cower and back away, that's okay. It's okay to have that.
Right.
You just have to know how to approach a situation.
But you also, there is some times that you have to advocate for yourself. There are points where you're at a
Absolutely.
line where it's like you can back out of those situations. And I a lot of times, for me, I think it's better to back out of situations. That's something I'm trying to teach Gavin, and I've had to change my entire break with reality, because I spent time on, growing up on Lafayette Street in Rochester, from like
Ugh.
14 to 19.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
as soon as I could, I was out of Rochester, and I'll never live there again. That's why I was so hard set on living in Barrington, because of school systems and bad experience
Does
getting shifted.
Barrington goes to Dover, right?
Yeah. Oh, actually, it's really awesome. That's why we're here. They go to the middle school, right? I mean, he's going to his middle school next year in Barrington, and then in Dover, it basically, you choose the option of Co-Brown or Dover, or I think the other one is I
Well, I
can't
feel
think.
like Co-Brown's a really good
Moheramet
school.
and Durham. What's that name? Ossipee, Osprey. I don't.
Oh, Ossipee, is that uh Ossipee has a funny name to it.
Yeah, no, there's something. It's in Durham, Lee. That whole area or
Yeah.
whatever. I forget the name of that school system, but there's that school system also,
Oyster
and it's
River?
Oyster River. There we go. Thank you. You're awesome.
Yeah.
I
I can't believe I remembered that. I used to cheer when I was a child, so
yeah,
let's talk about that for a second.
yeah.
So, when I was a child, there were three things, or let's say three things, but there were a few things that I wanted to do. I wanted to take singing lessons, or I wanted to, or singing or guitar, something, musical. I wanted to learn to read music. Um, it was too hard for me to do it in high school, like in band or chorus or anything like that, because there's just too much going on, too many people, and it just wasn't a great situation for me to learn that kind of a thing. Uh, then I wanted to learn to sew, and I wanted to take ballet. So all like really creative things.
Mhm.
Well, my mom said no to all of them. And I was like, okay. So then I wanted to do track. And I was like, well, if she wants me to do something active, like maybe I'll do track. Like I was really interested in doing that. She's like, no, we can't do that. It's like, okay. And then like she like a month or so later, she's like, well, your sister wants to cheer, so you're gonna do that too. It's like, okay. So
But
basically, because
that's
my
not what I
sister,
want to do.
yeah, like so because my sister wanted to cheer, I had to cheer. And then it got too expensive for the both of us to do it, so only my sister got to do it. So
That sucks.
yeah, and
That
I'm
really sucks.
I'm the oldest, but both my dad and my mom were middle children, and my sister is the middle child. So I think for her, like I don't think they knew what they were doing at that point. Like I don't think they realized like how fucked up that really was. I think they just thought they were doing the best that they could, and they were. They had three children. It's hard to have three children and only
Yeah,
two parents,
for
you
sure.
know, and both of them had to work, you know, and
Absolutely.
so
Why I lived on Lafayette Street.
yeah, exactly. I
It's
grew up in
hard and
Somersworth.
really expensive, and that was, like, it was like $900 for 3 bedrooms, whole floor basically apartment.
Yeah, and I will say this: as an adult, I made it my mission to do the things that I wanted to do as a child because my parents were not supportive in that. Like they gave me 3 guitar lessons once, only 3. And then they gave me like a handful of singing lessons and they're like, this is too expensive. And so no more. So then for 5 years, I took singing lessons. And so this was as an adult. I quit singing lessons right when COVID happened, is when I stopped doing singing lessons in
Hmm.
March of 2020. And in then the other thing was I taught myself how to sew because I wanted to go to a Regency ball, and so I
Hmm.
learned I made a whole bunch of I made some dresses and some outfits because we wanted to dress up and it was expensive to buy stuff, so I just made all the outfits, and so I just taught myself how to sew. I had some help with some friends and stuff like that, but like I did it myself, I took that initiative. And so I learned as an adult that I did harbor some resentment to my parents for what they did, but I had to forgive and let go of that because they fucked up big time.
Hmm.
I don't know that they've ever fully admitted that they fucked up. I don't know if they ever will. I think they'll see it differently, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But I realized that those times happened, but I can change them now. And so I took it upon myself to do the things that childhood Jess wanted to do and just embraced what my that part of myself.
Right. And,
And
and you should. I mean, that's
yeah,
so
and
important.
I think it makes me have a better perspective on life than if I didn't do that. And like I look at the world with childhood wonder. Like I'll drive by someplace that I've driven by a million times, but I have this unique ability to look at it like I've never seen it before or like it's the most magical thing in the world. And I always tell my 10-year-old nephew, I'm always like, magic is real. And he'll be like, no, it's not real, And I'll be like, yes, it is. Like when he found out the tooth fairy wasn't real, he was really upset. Or no, it wasn't tooth fairy. He found out he caught my sister hiding the Easter eggs.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
And so he's like, he was really disappointed and really upset. And
Oh,
I was
that
like,
shatters a whole reality
yeah, I'm
for,
like, Brody, those things are real. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, the tooth fairy, the Easter bunny, Santa, those things are all real.
Mhm.
Maybe they're not a physical being, but they're real because we believe in the magic of it and it's the spirit of what it means that's real. It's not necessarily a physical manifestation of something. It's not
Right.
tangible. But
And I mean, what's the nature of reality now? That's getting real. wild.
Do you think that we're in a simulation?
I don't know. Now I'm really starting to have some questions, and we got to go into that before you got to go because I don't want to. I know we're going to be somewhat limited on time,
Yeah.
but I do really want to. But we should, before in closing, I think it is really super important that that we're doing those things because
Right.
I mean what if life is a simulator? We don't know. Any of this is like,
Right.
who fucking knows? And I mean, with the problem is with the kid is like, you've got to be so careful with that now because they are a whole other generation of scared and anxious and depressed, and
Mhm.
I'm already struggling with some of that with, I mean, Gavin's been through a lot, I hate to go into personal stuff over the air, but I tend to be pretty open. Most people know
You
on
know
this
what? Be
show.
personal. I was just personal.
Uh,
I don't care. If
yeah,
you want to be
no,
personal, you be personal.
it was always my thought that Kayla was worried about is, personal information being, him being safe, personal,
Mhm.
but it's not like we're, getting a
We're not
huge
giving a
amount of
social.
listeners,
Yeah.
but we do get a decent, more than I would have ever expected this show to go. So I'm happy, and it continues to grow. Um, I am just, I think that, I'm happy, like making this podcast, generating no money on it right now because I mean I'm disabled, and that's a whole mess of things that I don't want to get into
Mhm.
until it's like self-sufficient. A business takes 5 years to show a profit. Hey, if it happens sooner, if there's potential there, and I see any type of actual revenue coming in, then I might see the benefit to monetize. Like if I start seeing it monetize initially, um, more than whatever could have come in so far, which I pretty much denied because I haven't, things have been rocky for a little bit.
Right.
And
And you need to be able to, if you're going to monetize something, then those people are relying on you and
yeah,
you want to make sure that you're consistently putting out a product.
that's absolutely it. And I mean, people know here, like, where it hasn't been consistent. I mean, for a while I had very consistent, and then things kind of dropped off. But this is part of the reason why having a co-host is important. Is that dynamic is important there, but also
Mhm.
having somebody that, like, if you needed to interview them and I can't, like, that is great to have. Like if we both can't be there, um, not that I ever want us to be in a position where we're stuck interviewing alone, but I mean, you're totally
But it
capable of
wouldn't be
holding
stuck
your own.
though.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like between the two of us, like either one
Yeah,
of us could interview a person and it would be
right.
totally fine because ADHD.
Exactly. Superpower, which is totally why I want to get Jess McCabe on this show, because
Mhm.
she is really awesome and almost like saved a part of my life, I would even say. Like after Kayla passed away, I was struggling with ADHD more than ever in my entire life. ADHD grief, I guess I haven't really dealt with it very well. And then all of the past grief from my mom and dad and like all kinds of death, Matt too, all of it happened right when she died. That was the over the edge.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how much it could shut me down. Um, and it did, somewhat, which I've never struggled. I've never had depression drag me down ever. Like there's been points where, like when my mom passed away, I didn't deal with it healthy. Like anybody who knows, when I was working at the 99 restaurant at the when I was like 21, it was not a great time. But as time goes on, you
Now,
adapt.
how old's your son?
He's 10.
10.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to guess that he was born after your mother passed.
Yes, yeah, he never
Okay.
met my mom. He got to
And
meet my father, but
your how old was he when your father passed?
it was, geez, 4 years ago now. I've got to think back. Oh my
So he
god.
was 6.
Yes, yeah.
So,
5 or 6.
he's never known a life prior to you suffering from severe depression.
No, he has, he's seen me
I mean, I'm
very
not saying that you don't
positive.
have good. I'm not saying that you don't have good times, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but you've been suffering from this severe
I don't know
depression
how much
since
he
he was born.
picks up on the depression thing now, because I don't outwardly show it. I can't stop. I have
Well,
to
as a parent, you
go
can't. I
right.
mean,
But
it's okay to show the vulnerability and to show the
oh,
emotion and
he
whatnot,
sees that for sure.
but when you have a major breakdown, like I can agree, like wanting to shield your child from that because that's not something that I think they're emotionally equipped to deal with, and nor
Right.
should they be. They
Hmm.
should not be your crutch in that.
Right.
But I do think that in all of this, I think that this is actually preparing him life skills for later in life
For sure.
that, you know, like shit happens in life. It's okay to be emotional, but you deal with your shit and you keep pushing forward
Right.
because things get bad, but things get better.
That's true.
And then
And
when things get better and they get bad again, they will get better again.
that's
But
right.
you are in charge of that. You're in charge of that.
You're in charge of keeping yourself creatively active, and which is really important. I say, physically and creatively active is super important, and staying socially active, physically
Mm-hmm.
creative, and, like mentally, like creatively, because like creativity for me is a lifesaver.
Me too.
Socially, if I don't keep up with it, things like this, like even leading up to this, like I could see like where less and less interaction with people becomes more and more difficult to reintegrate the
Mm-hmm.
less time you spend, the more time you spend away from people.
Now,
Um,
I mean, I'll say like that with COVID and well, first off, I'll give a preface. 3 years ago, I had a concussion. That was like my fifth concussion, sixth concussion, like big concussion, not like something, all concussions have an impact on you, but like this was a big one. And it's the second time I've had post concussion syndrome.
oh,
And so it's been a really difficult time, and a lot of people just don't understand that sometimes I just need to be by myself, be home, sit on the couch. Like, I don't want to interact with people. I don't want to do anything. I just need to rest because I work a regular job and then I also do voiceover and all my other creative endeavors. And it's like, I had to give up a lot of those things just so one, I could work, and two, to keep my sanity and to heal and whatnot. And people didn't always understand that. And I've lost a few friends and I've lost the respect of some people because I just say no a lot. And I'd be like, I can't. I physically can't. I mentally can't. And the more that happened, the easier it was to
to do
just
that.
become a hermit.
Hmm.
And, but part of me though is like, I need that. My body needs that. And so it's okay to need that for a while. But then I need to start getting myself back out there.
Right, it's okay to recharge, but you gotta, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I couldn't agree anymore. I really, really have a hard time with like consistency and staying on top of things, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really important for me to stay consistent with stuff like band practice every week. I really need to be there every week, and there's been a lot of circumstances where I haven't been able to, and that fucks things up for me for the week, emotionally. Like it's like a creative out release, you know what I mean?
And then you
um
also have that
but
guilt of like, I've let other people down.
oh, definitely, that's the worst, because I definitely let them down, a bunch of times, because
And not on
there's been a lot
purpose.
of missed practices, but never on purpose. And I mean, I think they know that for the most part. Like, I think Doug gets pissed, and I mean, he does. He's an asshole. Love him. But that's part of the reason why it's a good dynamic with somebody like him in the band, is that like he keeps me accountable. He's more consistent. He's it's
Type
good to
A.
have that to, yeah, balance to my chaos.
Yeah.
Uh,
I can't do consistency. Like I like routines. I've
Hmm.
not found a way to make a routine stick or work for me
Right.
yet, and that's something I struggle with. So what do
Hmm.
you do to find a routine?
Um, I don't. No, just kidding. I, I,
Ah,
my Gavin is a big part of that. Lists, become a part of that, but scheduling, like I need to stay on my schedule, and I've been struggling getting there. But I think that this is really important. And I think that Jess even says this in some of her videos, how to
mhm.
ADHD. I know the listeners have heard me suggest checking out her YouTube, but I suggest anybody who's listening now, if you haven't heard me say it before, how to ADHD for anybody who has ADHD,
Yeah.
phenomenal. But she points this out that like you, oh, what was it? What was I talking about right before I shifted
Lists
gears?
and getting on task and staying
Oh,
on
yes,
schedule.
yes. Thank you. Being on schedule, but also if I fall off schedule and things
Mhm.
suck and I fail, not destroying myself about it. Like, you fucked up,
Yes.
totally okay, not a problem, but you can't go back and do the things you missed. Unfortunately, you missed those things and you missed them. This is the problem, is that a lot of times ADHD go, okay, well, I'll just replace this with that and this with that, and everything falls apart. Nope,
Yep,
just
because it's
get
a lot of
right back
pressure.
on schedule where you left off and where you should be. And unfortunately, you missed the other things, and that's something that you just have to cut off for the day, and you'll get it tomorrow. It'll be in place where you're supposed to do it tomorrow.
So
And
I spent a year
hard.
in speech therapy for ADHD.
Oh,
And so I did, it was at CBT, cognitive behavior therapy.
oh,
And the reason for that was because the concussion was so bad that it like fucked up my life really, really
oh
awful,
my
like
God.
very, very badly.
Holy.
Because before, so I didn't know I had ADHD until about a year and a half ago. And no, 2.5 years ago. I'm sorry. 2.5 years ago is when I found out I had ADHD. And I thought that I was going crazy. Like, what happened? Like, well, what was happening was once I got the concussion, my brain could no longer accommodate. So I was so good at, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, I was so good at coping with it, not even knowing that I had it. I was diagnosed when I was like 10. Nobody told me. But
Oh,
because I could cope so well with it, I created just internally and instinctually created a bunch of modifications to my life to deal with it. Like I just had like all of these things that I would do to
just like, what's wrong? What's going on? Like, why am I having to come up with these different things and
it
not
didn't, you
knowing?
know what? Didn't even
You give
occur to
up?
me that I was doing it. I had no idea I was even doing it
Wow.
until I lost that ability because of the concussion.
Oh,
And now I've had to relearn my whole fucking life.
holy
And
shit.
it it got to a point where I had to like retrain my brain to do all these things, like create different pathways. And, now I feel inadequate all the time. Like I used to have this amazing vocabulary and I used to feel like I was really, really smart and intelligent. And now I don't feel that way because my brain isn't keeping up anymore the way that it used to. So, and people might say like, oh, that's age or whatever. No, it's the concussion. It 100% is the concussion that caused all this.
Mhm.
And that's fine. It's not a big deal now at this point because I'm just going to learn to adapt. When I say it's not a big deal, it is a big deal to me, but I'm
Right.
just learning to adapt.
Yep.
And now I'm trying to relearn how I did all those things to just adjust my life without even realizing that I did it. Like how
I can't imagine that. I can't even, because I have been on ADHD medication off and on. There's years where I didn't take it because I hated it, and I've always struggled with it because I
mhm.
hate that stuff. I really hate being on it. But it is effective as long as I'm, following lists and not hyper focusing and
The hyper
stressing myself.
focusing.
Yeah, it becomes a problem on or off the medication. It just becomes way less erratic on the medication, more
Yeah.
manageable.
And I mean, I
Um,
noticed that I was like, the hyper focusing had been happening for a long time prior to the concussion. So that
I
was something that
can't
I always
imagine.
dealt with,
Holy
but
shit.
I could no longer regulate myself
Right, and
to
you had no idea that you, oh my God, that's,
no clue for my entire life that this was a problem. Because my doctor, when I was a child who had diagnosed me, was like, is she doing okay in school? Like, I was like a straight A student. The only problem that we were having was that I was disruptive because I'd finished my work so quickly that I'd disrupt the other students. That was the biggest problem, was that I would basically, like, you know how when you're on your ADHD medication and like you're like, okay, like you're racing and you're like, oh my gosh, like I could do so much and I'm doing such a good job and like I
yes.
have so much energy
And
and
there's so many
that was,
ideas and yeah,
yeah, that was me in grade school.
yeah.
That was me, and that was how and that was how I managed my whole childhood, was like that, like where I'd just be
Wow.
like, okay, like, but then I would have the times where, like, if my handwriting wasn't neat enough, or like if I had to scribble something out on a piece of paper because I couldn't write in pencil, I had to write in pen because I could not stand pencil.
Oh my
I would like rip
gosh.
up my homework all the time, and like,
Same. I
I
hated
threw a lot of
pencil.
tantrums, or
I was
I was
obsessive compulsive about it too. Like
with what?
I was obsessive compulsive with pencil too. I wouldn't go on
Yes.
a race thing. So I still to this day, if I'm writing something and I miss a word or whatever, instead of going back and like erasing it, I'll just write the letter in that was supposed to be there over into it and just messy. My writing was
Yeah.
the worst. Awful
Yeah.
grown up.
I what was the other thing? Oh, like I was notorious
Sorry.
for doing so many projects the night before it was due.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a
Uh-huh.
classic ADHD
Oh yeah. And
move right
my
there.
mom would end up having to stay up with me all night, but I always had the most creative projects. I always would get like A pluses for
Oh my
creativity.
gosh. Same. Like, same. I remember one time I made this I took this I didn't know what to do. So I made this, like, I don't remember what it was supposed to be, but I took a piece of paper and I kind of like crumpled it up and all that and made it like worn a little bit. And then I burnt the edges around the
Mm-hmm.
edges and then stained it with tea bags and like
Yep.
wrote and like this, tried to make like this old English kind of writing. I don't remember what it was for, something related to school. And I just fucking nailed it with no time. Same thing, crunching
Yep.
it right before. Oh my God, I forgot. I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do? I start crying, like
You know,
flipping out. My mom's
I
like,
was
calm
I
down.
remember I was in sixth grade, okay? Sixth grade. So let's think. I was born, I'll give the year I was born. I was born in 86. So sixth grade was what, like 95, 96, something like that. And we had on our computer, we had like this program for making like birthday cards or something like that, like designing birthday cards. And I remember all my school projects, I would always design my own like do all these like crazy like designs, like I was basically doing graphic design. I had no idea what it was.
Wow.
And I my favorite thing to do was to like, I would always choose like these different fonts and like I don't know, I was obsessed with always making my own all of my book reports and everything, they would always have like a completely designed like title page,
Were you
cover
good with
page.
computers?
Hmm?
Were you good with computers as a
I
kid?
still am.
So I feel like I've always been very technical, but I
Mhm.
didn't grow up with a computer in my house until I was like 15, and then we only had it for a little while because it's a rent center because we couldn't really afford one.
Mhm.
And this was back when like Napster was a thing. You're right.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
my God. Yeah, I was born in 84, so only like a couple of years
Yeah.
before you. And literally, yeah, we had like a gateway. It's terrible computer, but we couldn't afford, we couldn't afford internet, and ultimately I ended up we didn't have it for a while, but I didn't have a computer in my life really again until I was like late 20s. Late, early 20s. Uh and I've been very technical, like when it comes to everything else, but computers has never been a
So
strong ability for me.
my dad, uh, he was bringing home DOS computers like IBM's in the early 90s. So he was always he was a programmer
Got it.
for a lot of
So,
it. So like, but he built so like Dragon Naturally Speaking, like when that first came out, first came out,
oh wow,
he designed and built the headphones, the microphones
really?
that came with it. Yeah. And it was like a really cool project. And so he would bring it home and I was beta testing it. I didn't know I was beta testing it. He had me testing it
That's so
when
cool.
before it ever even came out. And like he taught me how to like program a little bit. And then like when I was little, and I think starting in 5th grade, I started doing web design.
Wow, that's
And
really awesome.
I knew HTML inside and out. Like I was always technologically inclined. Like right now I'm learning Python just
That's
because
so fascinating.
I really, really, really like love programming and I love designing. I cannot draw. I cannot do anything like that, but I can make web pages, like
So I never picked up on any of my my abilities, like technical abilities, like not like learning things and being able to store knowledge and random information and all that stuff. Like, so I feel like I've been really good with computers, at least because like when it came to electronics or um appliances specifically,
mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just one of those things that now I'm not like overconfident. Yeah, no, I don't know. I think I am. Like I'm super confident when it comes to everything related appliances, and I just don't know. It's like where that information is ever going to benefit me again, because I spent 10 years of my life selling appliances. But the way I went up the ladder very quickly was my technical information. Like I
And
absorbed
see that.
so much information when it came to like Samsung and
But that's good though,
well,
because you can use that in real life.
right.
Because think about like all the knowledge that you have that you can apply in other areas when you're researching stuff.
Right. No, that's research has always been my thing. Like I get in these data holes, these research holes where like it starts with one thing and then I end up learning about a compressor and then ending up learning about an entire company that makes compressors over in China for all of the brands. And just like
Yep.
that's how I started into the appliances. When I worked at Sears, I was like, I can't do straight commission, but they're forcing me to try here. They think I'm really good at it. They saw the guy who hired me saw something in me that I didn't see in me, and he was right. If it wasn't for him, I would have
That's
never had that career.
You know
Um,
what? That's so I met my
John
husband
O'Neill.
at Circuit City. I was selling cameras.
Ha!
And we weren't commission based at the time, you know what I mean? Like they had stopped commission.
Wild.
But we met at Circuit City where he was doing audio
That's awesome.
installs, like car audio installs.
I love it.
And I was selling cameras and then I moved over to TVs and I moved over to iPods and like I would do like all sort like I could pretty much go into any department and dominate it. And
That
it
is
was just
wicked fucking
because
cool.
first of all, I feel like I'm really friendly and then I love to talk. And then I would just like they would just give me information or whatever and I would just like keep trying to learn as much as I possibly could all the
Right.
time.
You just got to ask questions. That's it.
Yeah,
Just
and
keep asking questions and you'll get
I
the information
have
you need.
I have a really like curious personality. So like that's one of the things that gets me in trouble at my regular day job is that like when there's a problem, I want to solve it. And
Right.
sometimes
Sometimes
they're like
not
you
your problem
can't
to
do
solve.
that because, like we need you to only focus on this. And I'm like,
Right.
but there's this problem and if we don't fix it, it's going to compound. And
Right.
then like and it usually ends up happening that it'll compound later, you know what I mean? But people don't realize it until it's too late.
Oh,
And
no,
then they don't usually
you're right.
believe me that that's the problem. You know what I mean? Like it's
It is. It's one of those things that, like, same thing with appliances. It was, you don't, you think you're getting out of it easy now, but that shit's gonna come back and haunt you, man. That
mm-hmm.
sale's gonna come back for you, sure enough.
Uh-huh.
You get your ducks in a row, or the ducks are gonna come back to fuck you, man. And every time I ever tried to make a shortcut, it came back to bite me. So I just never did it again.
Uh-huh.
I was out of that idea. I mean, I learned pretty quickly. Like I sold it. Radio Shack was the first place. That's a place to, oh, geez, I'm knocking
Oops.
stuff over here. That's a place to really battle hard in any type of salesperson because that is a horrible place to have to sell stuff.
I can
Um,
imagine.
but I couldn't imagine going back into something like that. Whereas now, I did the appliance thing and I could see selling appliances, but I wouldn't want to sell anything other than that. But that's why I'm going to start that. I'm going to start a YouTube channel specifically devoted to telling every brand out there that they suck. And now, basically, for customers, specifically, I'm going to call it appliance entropy.
I like it.
It's going to be basically just telling everybody all of the hidden secrets of the appliance industry that the brands don't want you to know. And I have no bias, so I can tell everybody that they're made like garbage.
They are
It's awesome.
100%.
It's great, guys. Unless you're buying Speed Queen washer or Sub-Zero refrigerator, they're pretty much all made to last 7 to 12 years. Doesn't matter what brand. I tell people, what are you looking for? If you just want to wash your clothes, buy Simple. If you want to last a long time, there's like one brand for laundry. Everything else, just buy the features you'll use. Don't spend money for extra shit.
Yep,
Buy it in
that's what we
July
do.
or November. 2 times a year you got to buy. No other time.
July and November. Oh, I
July and
didn't think about
November.
that. I gotta think about that because we need a new dryer. Ours is starting to squeal.
Oh my God, do it in the next 4 days. Serious. If it dies on you, you don't want to wait until November. You want to July or November. It's
I
the
don't think
two
it'll
most
die.
aggressive times.
I don't
But
think it'll die on us yet. Like my
you'll
husband
have
can
it out
fix
in your
it.
shed. You know what I'm saying? Like it'll be out in your shed waiting for you. Yeah, if it's an old enough dryer, they're very simple. Or any dryers, for the most part, they're very simple.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, he already took it apart once before for I think he was cleaning out the lint trap or whatever.
yeah,
And I think there's just a belt that needs to be fixed or something. It's just like squealing really bad. Um, but it's in the basement, so as long as it just keeps going for a little while longer,
that's
we're fine.
that's
But
good. I mean,
let me ask
dryers
you
are always
this.
pretty easy.
Let me
Uh,
ask you this.
yeah,
So, I will the dryer last longer using a lower heat setting?
no.
No?
No. I mean, it's maintenance of your dryer. How often you getting in there and cleaning it? How often is it like arcing any type of electricity because there's lints can be everything from like paper in your pocket to actual like steel wool to jean fiber to skin. Like people have no idea that lint actually can bridge electricity, and there's
Mm.
issues that can happen to your dryer in small amounts over a long period of time just from not maintaining it. So the big thing is
So,
maintaining it, and not overloading it.
we're awful because I only wash my clothes like in one load
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
No
I don't
worries. It's
separate
the same, huh?
and I don't separate anything. But we do that and we only do like 2 loads of laundry a week. So I think that's why our dryer is able to
So you're
last.
us. You're us. The same thing here.
Yep.
And Gavin's got a decent amount of laundry, goes through it quickly, so it's often. And I've got front loaders, and luckily they've lasted a while, and I'm just hoping they'll trudge along. But I'm already at the life expectancy. That
Yeah,
7 years, I the way I look at it is 7 years. I was in the industry long enough to know 7 years is the mark. I got to 7 years, I got lucky. I shouldn't say that. 7 years is what you should expect, but people have stuff die in 3, and the
yep,
brands go, "Whoop, sorry."
out of warranty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell people that, like, I'm gonna tell them, and this is why I'm gonna have the thing. 10 year your 10-year warranty on your fucking Samsung machine, on your Samsung washing machine is not a 10-year warranty. It's 10-year on the part in the mail. And that's if you can prove that it's defective, which you can't because you're not a service tech.
Uh-huh.
So they cut him by the balls, and people don't realize it. But that's exactly what I'm gonna have. Oh man, I'm gonna piss
I
off
can't wait.
people with
I
this
cannot
industry.
wait.
Oh, it's gonna be an industry rocker because I looked online and there's not one person doing what I want. There's people with appliance repair and suggestions of what you should buy because I'm brand loyal, because every one of those guys working in an appliance job, nobody cares enough to get online. But somehow I find myself on forums still talking about appliances, and I'm like, all right, I'm sick of this. I see all these people, and I see the repair people. I'm in line with a lot of the repair people, and I'm like, somebody needs to just be telling these people, because there's nobody knowledgeable anymore unless you go to an independent store. But I don't want to stay talking about appliances. You got to go here shortly.
Yeah, I gotta say goodbye to my husband.
You gotta go.
Yes.
We'll get into a little bit more with the aliens thing. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's
That's
crazy.
a whole other episode. That's a whole
I
other
know
episode.
it is a whole episode. Like, seriously, I was going to do one until this. I was going to do one by myself, just devoted to on the aliens, which is what we were talking about. I usually don't do episodes by myself for the reason of the rambling, but like, this is some crazy shit. So maybe we can do another one shortly here where we're just delving into some shit, because I'm going to send you some links.
Yes, please do. I want to read them.
So that's great. And I'm really excited to move forward this way. And I'm excited for our listeners, because I think there's going to be a lot of really great episodes moving forward.
I think so too.
And so I am so excited that there's a new direction for the podcast, and I welcome you to it, and thank the listeners for being so patient. As you can see, I think there's going to be a lot of things coming together, and I've already got a bunch of guests lined up. So
yeah, and I have some ideas too.
Yeah, this is awesome. Really awesome. So we really appreciate all of you listeners out there from all over, and really hope that we can get things going consistently enough that it's not like 2 months like it was just recently.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on. And
we will do this again soon.
Absolutely. And listeners, thank you so much. As always, abstract here, abstract there.
Abstract Transmissions.